Unaware he owned the construction company her parents worked for, Clara Calloway sat across from her husband that evening, a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips as the golden Dallas sunset brushed against the marble countertop. She watched Ryan, her husband of 8 years, flip through blueprints of the new Edison Towers project papers he wasn't supposed to have access to as just a mid-level engineer. He looked calm, confident, too confident for a man earning a manager's paycheck. Something about his composure made her uneasy, though she couldn't name it. To her, Ryan was the man who'd once dreamed big but settled for mediocrity, a man whose injured leg had slowed his life down. She thought she'd outgrown him. "I sent the wire transfer today," Ryan said softly without looking up. His tone was warm but distant, like a man who'd learned to measure every word. "$500 million into our joint investment account, just like you asked." Her pulse quickened, though she hid it behind a sip of wine. "Good," she murmured, feigning calm. "It's better when couples invest together. That's how trust grows, right?" Ryan smiled faintly, closing the folder. "Trust," he echoed. "Funny word, isn't it?" For a moment, silence stretched between them. Outside, the faint hum of traffic carried across the Dallas skyline. Inside, everything looked perfect. Crystal glasses, soft lighting, a couple who seemed to have it all. But beneath that surface lay something colder. Betrayal measured in whispers, transfers, and secret meetings. Clara's phone buzzed under the table. She didn't need to check the name. Nathan Dorsey, Ryan's boss, had texted his usual line. "He bought it. Dinner tomorrow?" She glanced up. Ryan's eyes were still on her, unreadable. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his tone curious but not accusing. "Is everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Just work. You know how clients can be." But Ryan knew more than he let on. For weeks he'd been watching. Every late-night call, every shift in tone, every unexplained meeting. The man who appeared crippled and ordinary had spent years building something she couldn't begin to imagine. A corporate empire spread across 6 holding firms, one of which quietly owned Edison Builders, the same construction company where Clara's parents worked. And now, the woman planning to divorce him after emptying their $500 million joint account was unknowingly plotting against her husband, the man who signed her parents' paychecks. Ryan rose from the table, his limp barely noticeable now. "Clara," he said quietly, setting his glass down. "Sometimes, the foundations we build tell the truth we've tried hardest to hide." She looked up, puzzled. He smiled faintly, stepping away. "You'll understand soon enough." But what she didn't know was that her betrayal had already triggered 7 levels of revenge so meticulous, so devastating, that by the time she discovered who truly owned everything around her, it would be far too late. "I want everything, Ryan, the house, the cars, and half of your so-called fortune. By the time this divorce is over, you'll be begging for a paycheck." Those were the last words Clara Calloway said to her husband before slamming the papers on his desk and walking out to meet her lover, the same man who unknowingly worked for Ryan's company. "You can't win this, Ryan. I've already emptied the account. You'll crawl back to me when you're broke." That was her final threat the night she transferred $500 million from their joint account into offshore funds tied to her new fiancé, Nathan Dorsey, Ryan's own boss. What she didn't know, what no one in Dallas knew, was that the quiet, limping engineer she mocked for being a failure secretly owned the construction empire her parents worked for. The very company she and her lover planned to steal contracts from was his. Every brick, every paycheck, every project across the city carried his signature. When the court date came, Clara arrived dressed for victory, certain she'd crush the man she believed was broke. But when the judge unsealed the financial records, everything shifted. The truth spilled across the courtroom like wildfire. Ryan wasn't an employee. He was the CEO, the billionaire owner behind a web of shell companies worth billions. Every dollar she'd stolen had never left his empire. And then came the final blow, the DNA results. 2 children she'd sworn were his, weren't. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret she'd buried rose up in that moment, turning her arrogance into ashes before the flashing cameras and murmuring reporters. Ryan never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His silence was strategy, his kindness a trap, his revenge a masterpiece executed through the law he mastered, and the empire he built in silence. In that Dallas courtroom, Clara didn't just lose a marriage, she lost her name, her lover, and her illusion of power. Because while she was busy plotting how to destroy him, Ryan was rebuilding his foundations not to survive her betrayal, but to bury it. Viewers, imagine this. Your wife drains $500 million, divorces you for your boss, mocks your pain, and still believes she's won. What would you do if she had no idea you owned everything around her? Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you see the world differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This one will leave you speechless. The next evening, the city lights of Dallas shimmered against the rain-slick windows of the Callaway's penthouse. Inside, Clara's laughter floated from the bedroom as she spoke softly into her phone, pretending it was a client. Ryan stood in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator masking the faint tremor in his hands as he stared at the untouched dinner on the counter. He'd already stopped pretending not to notice. Every lie left traces perfume that wasn't his. Dinners charged to cards he hadn't used, passwords suddenly changed. When Clara disappeared for meetings, her GPS history told a different story of private suites at the Edison Grand, the same hotel chain owned by one of Ryan's subsidiaries. Tonight, though, he needed proof. He glanced at his watch. Detective Miles Jenkins had texted earlier. Confirmation. She's with Dorsey again. Room 1128. Photo evidence secured. Ryan exhaled slowly, steadying himself. For a moment, the ache in his leg flared a reminder of the accident that had nearly cost him everything. The steel rods beneath his skin ached in rhythm with his heartbeat. He used to think the pain was punishment. Now he realized it was training. At 9:47 p.m., Clara stepped out of the bedroom, wearing a pale blue dress, hair pinned neatly, eyes bright with excitement. "I have a late client dinner," she said, avoiding his gaze as she reached for her purse. Ryan looked up from his tablet, voice calm. "At the Edison Grand again?" Her hand froze for a split second. "What? You left a receipt in your car?" he said lightly, scrolling the tablet screen. "Same place as last Thursday." "Oh, that was a networking event," she stammered, forcing a laugh. Ryan smiled gently. "I see. Drive safe." She hesitated, searching his expression for suspicion, found none, and exhaled in relief. "Don't wait up." When the door clicked shut, the room fell into the kind of silence that presses against the walls. Ryan let it linger. Then he opened the secure folder on his tablet photos. Timestamps, video footage, Nathan Dorsey's hand on Clara's waist, their dinner, the kiss in the hotel corridor. He didn't blink, didn't curse. Just closed the folder and called Graham Tanner, his attorney. "She's crossed the line," Ryan said evenly. Graham's tone hardened. "Do you want me to start drafting?" "Not yet," Ryan murmured. "First, we build the case quietly. Financial audit, on all accounts, trust funds, everything under her signature. Also call Olivia, tell her to prepare the internal restructure plan. Phase 1 begins tomorrow. You're really doing this." "She emptied $500 million," Ryan said, glancing at the empty dining table. "But I'm not after money, I'm after truth." He ended the call, turned off the lights, and stood by the window watching the rain cut streaks of gold through the glass. Down below, traffic crawled toward the city center where Clara was now laughing in another man's arms. Ryan whispered to the night, voice low and calm. "Let's see how strong your new foundation really is." By morning, the Dallas skyline was bright again. The storm washed away. From the balcony, Ryan Callaway watched cranes stretch across the city, towers rising from concrete and sweat. To him, construction had always been about patience. You don't tear down a building all at once. You remove one pillar at a time until the whole structure collapses under its own weight. He intended to do the same with Clara and Nathan Dorsey. His phone buzzed. Olivia Hart, his executive assistant at Callaway Infrastructure Group, was waiting in the lobby downstairs. "Sir," she said once inside, lowering her voice. "Graham sent over the audit results. You were right. There's a series of hidden transfers from your joint account routed through a consulting shell tied to Dorsey's offshore entity." Ryan nodded slowly. "How much?" $497 million, sir. The last transfer cleared yesterday morning." Ryan leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "So she finished the theft before the affair was even public?" "Yes," Olivia said carefully. "Do you want to freeze it?" "Now." "Not yet," he said. "I want her to believe she's safe. People show their true selves when they think they've won." He stood, adjusting the cuff of his shirt, his limp barely noticeable now. "Prepare the documentation for Project Redwood. I'm moving all our top-tier assets from Callaway Infrastructure into the new holding company. Olivia blinked. You're isolating the core assets from Marital Reach? Exactly, Ryan said quietly. Once she files for divorce, her attorney will see empty accounts. No one will trace the subsidiaries back to me until I want them to. As she nodded, Ryan walked toward the glass wall overlooking downtown Dallas. Below, trucks bearing Edison Builders logos rolled past the same company Nathan managed, unaware his entire paycheck came from the man he was betraying. Ryan smiled faintly. Make sure the payroll transfer to Edison goes through as usual. I don't want anyone to notice a change. Let them think. I'm still just a project engineer. Olivia studied him a moment. Sir, may I ask something personal? Why not confront her directly? He turned to her, his expression unreadable. Because confrontation gives them control. Silence gives me time. Revenge requires both. She nodded, understanding more than he said. By afternoon, Ryan was at the construction site, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, moving among workers as if he were one of them. None of them knew the man giving quiet instructions was the CEO signing every check. His phone vibrated again, a message from Detective Jenkins. Your wife just entered Edison HQ with Dorsey. Private meeting. Photos coming. Ryan pocketed the phone, expression calm. As the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the half-built towers, Ryan whispered to himself, Phase 1 complete. Behind him, the steel beams rose into the sky, a reflection of his quiet vengeance, taking form. One deliberate piece at a time. A week later, the Callaway home felt colder than usual. The framed wedding photos on the hallway wall seemed to mock her, a smiling couple who no longer existed. Clara Callaway stood at the foyer mirror adjusting her pearl earrings, the same ones Ryan had bought her for their 5th anniversary. She hadn't worn them since that night. Today, she wore them for irony. Downstairs, Eleanor and Harold Miller, her parents, were visiting before their shift at the construction site. They didn't know about the divorce plans. To them, Ryan was still the generous son-in-law who paid their medical bills when Harold's back went out. Ryan's a good man, Harold said, sipping his coffee. You're lucky, Clara. Men like him are rare. She forced a smile. Yes, Dad, I know. Her mother noticed the new gold watch on Clara's wrist. That's beautiful. Did Ryan get it for you? Clara hesitated. Nathan. She almost said but caught herself. It's from work. Moments later, a discreet knock came at the door. A man in a gray suit stood there, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Callaway. Yes? Delivery from Preston and Graves Law. Need your signature. She signed without reading. The man left as quietly as he arrived. She glanced at the envelope. Divorce petition. Callaway v. Callaway. Her heart raced. It wasn't supposed to come today. She opened it and froze. The letterhead wasn't hers. The petition was filed by Ryan. Grounds. Infidelity, financial misappropriation, emotional distress, and fraudulent transfers. Filed through Graham Tanner and Associates. Clara's hand trembled. What is this? Ryan's footsteps sounded behind her. He was home early. I thought we'd stop pretending, he said calmly. She turned, face pale. You filed first? He nodded, voice low. You've been planning this for months, Clara. I just decided to make it official. Ryan. Wait. He raised a hand gently. Don't. You made your choice when you wired my money into Nathan's offshore account. I let it happen so I could trace every move. Her lips parted, shock flooding her face. You knew? I've known everything since the first dinner at Edison Grand, he said, eyes steady. You could have stopped at betrayal, Clara, but you stole from me. You lied to our children. And now? I'll let the truth build its own case. He turned away, calm and deliberate, as she struggled to find words. Ryan, please. We can fix this. He stopped at the door, looked back once. No, Clara. You broke what can't be rebuilt. When he left, her parents stood by the kitchen confused. What's going on? Harold asked. Clara's lips trembled as she forced a smile. Just business, Dad. Just business. But deep down, panic clawed through her chest. The man she thought she controlled had already taken the first, quiet swing, and she could already feel the walls shifting beneath her feet. By Thursday morning, Clara Callaway woke up to her phone vibrating nonstop bank notifications, failed transactions, and messages from her accountant. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through them. Account temporarily restricted. Pending investigation. Wire transfer reversed. Joint investment portfolio frozen by court order. What? She whispered, dialing her private banker. Marianne, it's Clara. There must be a mistake. Marianne hesitated. Mrs. Calloway, I'm afraid the orders came directly from the district financial court. Your husband's attorneys filed an injunction last night. Assets under joint ownership are frozen pending fraud investigation. Clara's stomach dropped. Fraud? On whose side? The documents name both parties, but there's significant emphasis on your recent offshore transfers. Clara slammed the phone shut and stared at the ceiling. Just last week, she was the woman with $500 million in liquid assets. Now she couldn't buy coffee without an alert flagging her account. She dressed quickly, makeup flawless, expression set. If she was going down, Nathan Dorsey had better have a plan. At Edison Builders HQ, Nathan's office door was closed when she arrived. Through the frosted glass, she saw his silhouette pacing. When she stepped inside, he was already on the phone shouting, I told you, that project bid was ours. What do you mean Calloway Holdings pulled the contract? Clara froze at the name. Calloway? What? Nathan hung up and turned sharply. His tie was loose, his jaw tight. We've got a problem. The city just terminated our primary contract. All new infrastructure bids are being redirected to a holding firm called Redwood Infrastructure Group. Her throat went dry. Redwood? He nodded. Yeah. No one's ever heard of them. But they have the same management structure as Calloway Infrastructure. It's like they appeared overnight. Someone's trying to gut us. Clara sat slowly. Nathan? What if this is him? He frowned. Ryan? He's an engineer, Clara. He doesn't have that kind of power. She stared at him for a long moment. You don't know him. Nathan rubbed his temples. Well, whoever it is, they're connected. We just lost $300 million worth of contracts. If we can't find new investors this quarter, Edison Builders collapses. Outside, the receptionist knocked. Sir, there are 2 men from the Attorney General's office asking for you. Nathan's face went pale. Tell them I'm busy. But the door opened anyway. 2 officials stepped in. Mr. Dorsey? We're here regarding an internal audit on your company's financials. You'll need to come with us. Clara stood, voice trembling. Wait, this is a mistake. The older official glanced at her. Mrs. Calloway, you might also want to speak to your lawyer. Your name appears on several of these transactions. Nathan glared at her, realization dawning. What did you drag me into? Clara couldn't answer. As the agents escorted Nathan away, she slumped into his chair, staring out at the skyline, cranes, steel, and half-finished buildings gleaming in the Texas sun. Somewhere beneath those projects lay her husband's invisible signature, stamped into every foundation she'd thought belonged to someone else. And for the first time, she understood what real power looked like. The conference room of Tanner and Associates was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the shuffle of legal papers. Ryan Calloway sat across from Graham Tanner, his longtime attorney, and the only man who truly knew who he was. Stacks of files lay open. Financial transfers, shell company diagrams, and property deeds. Graham's glasses reflected the glow of his tablet as he scrolled through page after page. Ryan, he said finally, voice low with awe. You built an empire inside an empire. I knew you had assets, but this is surgical. Ryan smiled faintly. Construction taught me everything. Never show the framework until the foundation is done. Graham nodded. So to summarize, Edison Builders is technically a subsidiary of Redwood Infrastructure Group, which itself is owned by Calloway Holdings, which you control through offshore trusts. Ryan leaned back. Exactly. I wanted to understand the people I hired, so I built a smaller firm under a false name and worked there. That's how I met Nathan. He looked at me like I was nothing. He paused, eyes distant. Clara used to make fun of me for coming home with dirt on my boots. She said I'd never think big. I smiled every time she said it. Graham studied him. You're not doing this just for revenge, are you? Ryan shook his head slowly. No. This is about justice. She used kindness as a weapon. She made me feel small so she could justify betrayal. Nathan saw a crippled engineer and thought I was a stepping stone. They both forgot that humility isn't weakness, it's camouflage. He turned to the window, watching the Dallas skyline shimmer in the afternoon heat. Let's talk about the case. Graham opened a folder labeled Evidence Packet A. Detective Jenkins' report confirms the affair. Photos, hotel logs, financial links, everything. The children's DNA tests are pending, but we already have enough to establish misconduct. Ryan's gaze hardened. Good. Once the DNA results come in, we'll file for full asset recovery and custody challenge. Make sure every motion is airtight. She'll bring high-profile lawyers, but I want the facts to speak first. Graham smirked. This is going to be one for the books. As Ryan signed the final preparatory motion, a flash of memory hit him the first day he met Clara. She'd spilled coffee on his blueprints at a downtown cafe, laughed, and offered to pay for the reprint. Back then, she was pure light. He'd built his life around that laugh. He blinked the memory away. File the paperwork tomorrow morning. Quietly. I want her to find out in court. Graham nodded, sliding the documents into a sealed envelope. When Ryan left the office, the city buzzed with rush hour chaos, but he walked with calm precision. Each step was another nail in the coffin of the life he'd once shared. Above him, a billboard for Edison Builders glowed across the freeway, building the future of Dallas. Ryan looked up, his lips curling into a cold half-smile. No, he murmured. I built yours. The marble-floored courtroom of the Dallas County Family Court was packed that morning. Reporters from the Dallas Ledger and Business Times Southwest filled the back row, sensing the scandal simmering between a once ordinary couple, now accused of embezzlement and betrayal. Clara Calloway walked in first, dressed like victory itself, fitted navy suit, flawless hair, diamond earrings catching the light. Her lawyer, Mark Ellison, whispered confidently beside her, "He's playing defense, Clara. With your affidavit and the half-billion trail, we'll make him look unstable. Stay poised." She nodded, glancing briefly toward the opposite table, and froze. Ryan Calloway sat there calm and unreadable, wearing a gray tailored suit, his attorney Graham Tanner beside him. His presence radiated something different now. Not the broken husband she'd imagined, but quiet, unshakable control. The judge entered. Court is now in session. Case number 4821, Calloway versus Calloway. As everyone stood, Clara caught Ryan's eye. He smiled politely, almost kindly, as if wishing her luck before a storm she didn't see coming. The proceedings began with formal statements. Clara's attorney painted her as a devoted wife driven to desperation by neglect. My client's husband concealed finances, isolated her, emotionally, and contributed minimally after his injury, Ellison said. She bore the financial burden and household responsibilities alone. Graham rose slowly. Your Honor, we'll allow those claims to stand for now. A ripple of curiosity spread through the courtroom. Then Graham opened his binder. However, Exhibit A shows a series of wire transfers made by Mrs. Calloway to offshore accounts associated with Mr. Nathan Dorsey, CEO of Edison Builders. Each transaction originated from the couple's joint investment account, amounts totaling approximately $497 million. Ellison stood abruptly. Objection, Your Honor? That's unverified. Graham handed a stack of documents to the clerk, all verified by the Federal Financial Bureau as of 8/17 this morning. The judge scanned the pages, eyebrows lifting. Overruled. Continue. Clara's throat went dry. She leaned toward her lawyer. How did he? Don't panic, Ellison muttered. We'll challenge chain of custody. But the hits kept coming. Graham presented hotel records, phone logs, emails, and surveillance stills from the Edison Grand. Each one methodically confirmed the affair. The courtroom grew silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. Finally, Graham said, "We'll rest this portion of our evidence for now. However, pending DNA results may redefine paternity status of the Calloway children. Those results are sealed under Order 314B, awaiting judicial authorization." Clara turned ashen. What DNA results? She hissed. Ryan's gaze didn't waver. Truth, he said softly, has its own schedule. The judge rapped the gavel. Recess for 30 minutes. Both counsels in chambers after break. As people rose, Clara's knees nearly buckled. The reporter's eyes burned into her back. Her lawyer whispered urgently, "We need to settle. Now. He's got you cornered." But Ryan had already stood, and was quietly speaking to Graham. His limp was barely noticeable now, his voice steady, measured, almost gentle, the calm of a man who already knew the verdict of a war that had only just begun. The courtroom was packed tighter after recess, reporters whispering, cameras flashing outside the glass doors. Word had leaked that new evidence was about to be unsealed. Judge Carla Reeves returned to the bench, adjusting her glasses. Both counsels, she said. I've reviewed the sealed report filed under Order 314B. Given its relevance to the case, I'm authorizing disclosure. Clara's hands clutched the table edge. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering, they wouldn't have opened it if it didn't favor him. Stay calm. Across the room, Ryan Calloway sat still as stone, his expression unreadable. Graham Tanner rose. Your Honor, with your permission, I'll read the summary findings. The judge nodded. DNA testing was conducted on minors Lucas and Chloe. Calloway, Graham began, his tone clinical. Comparative analysis between alleged father, Mr. Ryan Calloway, and said minors revealed a non-match probability of 99.97%. Subsequent comparison to DNA from Mr. Nathan Dorsey confirmed paternity, probability of 99.98%. The courtroom fell silent. Clara blinked rapidly, like the words hadn't yet reached her mind. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That's not. Judge Reeves raised her gavel. Mrs. Calloway, please remain composed. But Clara's voice broke into a tremor. He's lying. Nathan told me. Nathan Dorsey wasn't there. He was under house arrest pending financial fraud charges. The empty seat beside the defense table made her words sound even more hollow. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards. One murmured into a recorder. Confirmed husband, not biological father. Affair with boss verified. $500M embezzlement under investigation. Graham continued, unflinching. Your Honor, this information bears directly on child support claims, asset division, and emotional damages. My client requests full custody, withdrawal, and restitution of all misappropriated funds, plus damages. Judge Reeves looked to Clara's lawyer. Mr. Ellison? Ellison swallowed hard. Your Honor, under these findings, my client's position becomes legally untenable. We request a recess to reconsider settlement. Clara turned to him, wild-eyed. No, you said we could win. Mrs. Calloway, the judge snapped. Control yourself. But she was beyond control now. She stood, tears streaking down her makeup, voice cracking through the silent courtroom. You can't take them from me. They're my children. Ryan finally spoke, calm, steady, devastating. They're not mine, Clara. You made sure of that. But I love them anyway. That's the difference between us. Her knees gave way. She slumped into her chair, sobbing, makeup smeared, the once perfect image of success reduced to a trembling shell. Cameras flashed through the doorway. Judge Reeves rapped the gavel. Court is adjourned until Monday for ruling on financial restitution. Ryan rose, buttoning his suit jacket. As he passed Clara's table, he stopped for just a second, not to gloat, but to look at the woman he once built his life around. I told you once, he said softly. The foundations we build always tell the truth. She looked up through tears, but he was already walking away. Outside, the courthouse steps were swarmed with reporters shouting his name. But Ryan didn't stop for interviews. He just looked at the skyline, his skyline, and breathed, the weight of betrayal turning slowly into peace. 3 weeks after the court explosion, Dallas looked different. The billboards of Edison Builders had vanished from the skyline. Their offices stood empty, glass doors sealed with property under federal investigation tape. Inside a smaller downtown courtroom, Nathan Dorsey sat in cuffs, face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. His lawyer muttered frantic objections as the prosecutor laid out the charges. Wire fraud, embezzlement, insider trading. Each charge linked directly to the $497 million. Clara had stolen all of it, transferred through accounts Nathan managed. The evidence trail led to one undeniable fact. Every shell company they'd used to hide their theft was already owned by Calloway Holdings. Ryan had made sure of that years ago. Nathan's voice cracked as he shouted across the courtroom. You set me up. Ryan, sitting quietly in the back, didn't respond. He just met Nathan's glare and said softly, No, Nathan. You walked into the walls you helped me build. When the judge read the sentence, 15 years in federal prison, assets forfeited, Nathan's shoulders collapsed. The man who once called Ryan pathetic now stood shackled in the same suit he'd worn to dinner with Clara. By the end of that week, every media outlet in Texas had the headline, CEO's affair with employee leads to $500M. Scandal husband secretly owned the company. Clara became the most infamous woman in Dallas. Her name trended on social media for all the wrong reasons. Her luxury apartment was repossessed, the vehicles auctioned off, and the fashion boutiques she once flaunted cut off her credit lines. When the final court ruling came, Judge Reeves's voice was firm. Full restitution to Mr. Calloway, forfeiture of all liquid assets, and immediate custody transferred to the paternal guardian of record, Mr. Calloway. Ryan didn't smile. Revenge, in its purest form, wasn't celebration, it was truth revealed. After the hearing, Eleanor and Harold Miller showed up at his office. They looked broken, aged by the news that their daughter's actions had destroyed everything. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Ryan, we didn't know. We swear, we had no idea. He stood, gently taking her hands. I know you didn't, he said softly. You worked hard your whole lives. You deserve better than this mess. He handed them an envelope. Inside were employment contracts and retirement packages, both of them reinstated at Redwood Infrastructure Group, with salaries tripled. Harold stared at the paper. We can't accept this after what she did. You're not her sins, Ryan replied. You're the reason I learned the value of humility. Eleanor wept openly. God bless you, son. Ryan walked them out, the evening light warm against the glass. He paused at the doorway, watching them leave, two honest people walking away with dignity, the way it should have been from the start. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Ryan poured a glass of whiskey and stood by the window overlooking the city. The cranes were still, the skyline quiet. He whispered to himself, unaware she divorced the man who owned everything around her. Then he turned off the lights and walked toward the dark, the quiet sound of rain beginning again washing